Welcome to episode 2 of Alexa on Deck. I'm Coach O, or Francis.
And I am Coach S or Sam.
Today on the episode, we had Brigette Soza. She is an alumni of St. Leo University softball, where she graduated with a psychology degree. She is now a coach and finishing her last semester of her master's in sports exercise and performance psychology at Barry University as a volunteer coach for the softball team. She started playing baseball when she was 7 years old and then switched to softball at 13. She is originally from Miami, Florida. So today on the podcast, we talked a lot about expectations versus intention, talked a lot about journaling and tips on how to get the most out of it for whatever your preference is. We talked about 3 tips to improve your mindset, and Brigette also dove deep into validation and internal pressure and how we can manage that better as we continue to be high performance athletes. Thank you for making the time here, Brigette.
Of course. Thank you for even asking me.
Well, it's funny because we were trying to talk about who we wanted to be able to talk to and help kind of bridge the gap. And I was like, well, we have so many resources, like we should be asking the people in our lives. So then when we did get into that conversation at alumni about expectations and athlete performance, I feel like, it was just something that these young women need to hear about, and they need to understand how that can have a positive and negative impact on their performance. So do you want to elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah. So this all comes from my own personal experience and kind of what I've learned so far through my experience as a beginning coach. And also I went to this conference for sports psychology. And there's a person named Dr. Jess Garza. You guys should look her up. She's amazing. And she talked mainly about expectations and switching expectations to intentions. And I fell in love with that. Now it's like, I intend to do this today, or my intention for this practice is to, instead of, so you're removing that expectation. So I implemented that on my outfielders, kind of sometimes on the infielders, but we're separate. And I just saw a whole shift in their mindset and how they came to be, because I always think that expectations creates unnecessary pressure. I also believe pressure is self-inflicted, which I put that for the second question. But yeah, like I said, it creates pressure. There's unnecessary pressure that we create within the game and ourselves, and it also creates burnout, low self-worth, anxiety, and going on to depression and all that. So I think expectations creates just like negativity. I think also some people can deal with expectations. They expect highly and all that stuff. And we're all different as athletes, and especially as women. So it's how you deal with it. And I think these days there's more expectations. So it's better to just eliminate that. And that's why I implement intentions instead.
So how do you approach intention versus expectation? Like how do you kind of decipher that to make it clear as an athlete?
So expectations, kind of what I told my outfielders, like to be great today. There's no if, ands, or buts about it. But if you intend to be great, if there's a little bit of accepting failure, right?
Mhm.
So when you intend to do something and it doesn't turn out to be the way you want it to be, it's like, okay, at least I put in my effort and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, you're okay with not fulfilling it, knowing that tomorrow you can come in doing that. But if you expect to be great and that's all that's expected of you, all that's intended of you, my bad, all that's kind of, I forgot the word for it, but basically it's kind of like a picture, right?
Mhm.
You know what the picture's going to be, you know what the picture's going to look like. So when you get a picture back and it's not the way it looks like, you're like, why is it not like that?
Yes.
And I'm going right now because that's the way my head is. But it's basically not fulfilling what you were meant to fulfill. And that's
Well,
just unlike the game of softball and the game of sports, especially in a game full of failure.
yeah, absolutely. And like the more that you're talking about it, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, But what I'm taking from that is when we expect something, it's kind of almost as if something is out of our control and it's something that's just given to us without us having to put the effort in. But an intention is something that we have control over, and it's something that we are making an effort towards. So, like, if you're intending, say, for example, because I'm assuming that a great way to start doing these would just be through throughout your life and just everyday kind of like tasks and chores to get like a good feel on them. But if I said today I expect that I'm going to go to the gym, it's almost as if like that opportunity is just going to present itself to you without you ever having to do anything for it. But if you intend to go to the gym, it's you putting in that effort to make sure that you are going to do that and come up with a plan as to how you're going to make that happen.
Yes, that's exactly what it is. Kind of what I told my outfielders, like, I don't expect you guys to make the play every time, but I intend for you guys to come out here and give me all your effort. So yeah, and then eventually they make all the plays. So they do it without even thinking.
It's crazy how just shifting that mindset into something that's like, I think the expectation is very much um outside of your control. Whereas, like, as soon as you put it into the intention, you give yourself the control over the situation again. And
Mm.
I think so many, I don't want to, put it only in this category, but not very many women do well with being out of control. So I feel like it's such a powerful thing just to be like, okay, I'm in control, like I intend to do this.
Exactly. That's all I'm trying to teach them. And it's a day by day thing.
What mental aspect do you see young women struggle with the most? Because from my understanding, like you've been able to work with various sports, not just softball.
Oh, that internal pressure. That
Mhm.
internal pressure is self-inflicted. And I'll hit the second. I don't know if it's a mental thing. You guys can correct me if it's not or if it is. But first, the internal pressure. We create this idea of like, I need to be this and that. Even when you go, if you guys were athletes, when you go into exit meetings and you go and you leave the exit meeting, you're like, I have to be this and this. And then you find out as a coach that the player's thinking that it's like, that's not what we talked about in our exit meeting. So it's just, again, this internal pressure of being the best, being great, um, which is all great things, but it's more of competing day-to-day basis, not comparing yourself to others. And like you said, um, the second thing, correct me if I'm wrong, validation.
Mhm.
I don't know why, but I see in a lot of young women that they try to prove their worth either to their parents, to their coaches, or to, maybe if they're going on recruiting. And I can so um get into this validation because all I ever wanted growing up was the validation from my father. And then going on softball side, I was being recruited one time by college, and the game before that, perfectly fine, played the way I played, heard they were coming, and I acted like I was the best star on the team, which caused me to focus more on, errors and all this stuff. And everyone was like, what are you? Who are you right now? It's because I was looking for that validation, making sure they wanted me still and all this stuff. And I created this internal pressure that was never supposed to be there in the first place. So I think, and that eventually goes down, um, I think it starts in travel, but as you go into college, it messes up with your confidence, because we recruit kids and then they come into the team and we're like, who is this kid we recruited? You never had a confidence problem before this because usually in travel ball, you're the best player on your team. And then you're playing with the best and you have like this confidence shift. So I would say those are the two mental things that young women or athletes in general are going through today.
I
It's
think
almost
so many women can relate to that. Like when you're being recruited and you know that a coach is there, it's so nerve-wracking because and honestly, like I can't describe it any better than it's like going on like a date with somebody. I know you're not dating your coaches, but like just hear me out on this. So, like it's like you're like, do they like me? Are they still gonna want me if they see that I make a mistake? It's like things like that that you would have in your head in that kind of situation. And I think that one of the really important things that we can kind of like take for granted is that these girls are, I mean, I'm still young and I'm in my 30s. So like they're half my age and they're still learning all of those things. And it's really like life is just a lifelong journey of self-discovery and understanding your worth. And when they're so young and they're seeking that external validation, they're still at like this age where they don't really understand that all just comes from within them, and it's such a hard lesson to learn, but when you start putting in the work, it feels so good when you're not seeking external measures. But I think that social media does have a huge role in that because they're also growing up in the generation of likes and shares and stuff like that, and, that can totally be difficult. But okay, and then one last thing I just wanna say, because I totally agree with you that internal pressure is part of it. One of my favorite times to go up to bat was when there was bases loaded and 2 out. That was like that is the bee's knees for me. I can't think of any greater time because you get to walk off of that situation as the hero. Like, you know, it's just a
Yeah.
mic drop moment right then and there. And so that was my favorite time. Without a doubt, if I could pick the time that I wanted to go up to bat, it was that moment right then and there. And it was all because I tried so hard to find this clip. Frances knows exactly what I'm gonna say. But it was this female boxer, and I would have seen her when I was probably about 14 or 15 on TV. And they were interviewing her prior to this big fight. And they were like, "So what happens if you lose?" And she's like, "That hasn't even entered my mind." And they were like, "But really, like, what are you gonna do if you lose that fight?" And she's like, "That's not possible. That's not what I've gone over." And to her, she had gone over all of the ways that she was going to win and come out of that situation. And to her, like, that just hadn't even crossed her mind. So I just think that that internal pressure that she had put on herself was about I don't know how to really word it, but it's like taking away the pressure so that she's setting herself up for success, if that makes sense.
I would say it's a I was about to say it's a form of positive reframing.
Yeah.
So, like you were saying about going up during that pressure situation, that's exactly what I'm practicing, being a sports psych while being a coach. I try to implement that within my girls. So we had a red black series. So it was me versus the other coach. And we were down by four or something, bases loaded, and we had our best hitter up. And I didn't even tell her, hey, this pitch, tell her anything. All I told her was, this is your moment. You want this moment. Go up there and do what you do. You want this. This is what you live for. Fires them up. It doesn't let them think, oh my God, this is bases loaded. I need a hit. No, it's more of like, she's right. Like I love this. I want to be in this situation. And yeah, we got a base hit and we won. But regardless, it's reframing these girls' minds of like enjoying, encouraging, embracing that pressure, and just playing. At the end of the day, it's just playing and being the best person and best athlete you can be.
I feel like at some point too, for some reason, we forget that you play the game for those moments. Like, I think that that's why the positive reframing is so powerful. But it's like we don't play the game for beating every team like 15-0. Like that's not the most exciting season ever because you get to a point where you're like, oh, okay, like there's no challenge left in it. Like we want to be pushed and test to see what our practices have evolved to and how everything kind of comes together and those moments only happen when you're being challenged.
Yes, I completely agree.
Okay, so what would you say the difference is between mindset in the off season and in season?
Yeah, off season, I would say just working on your craft every minute, every like that's when you ask the big questions, building resilience, using imagery, mental rehearsal, kind of working with that pressure. And then in season is kind of like what we tell our players, like there's no time to think. It's go, 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 go. Everything you've worked on your craft, now we're applying it to different situations. And then the more positive, using positive self-talk, having that thought control. And then I would not ever stop saying this, competing every day, competing with yourself in the morning, competing with your peers, competing with the coaches, competing with any situation you get, you're competing. because that's what's gonna keep building your resilience and make you the best every day. And again, like you said, living for those moments, and that's eventually what's gonna happen, competing every day.
It's funny because there's like a little 12-year-old that I work with, and she only wants competition. Like, if it's not, I don't know, she can't find the competition against herself just yet. But if somebody challenges her to something and there's like this reward on the line, all of a sudden she's like, she buckles down and gets it done. It's like, okay, kid, like just find, put that competition against yourself now, like bet on yourself. But
Yeah, I love
okay, so what 3 tips would you recommend to improve mindset?
So I am also like, we get a team in the what I'm doing right now in my master's, and I have the really awesome. I have the women's rowing team, which I think is super cool because that's all mental, and the things they put their bodies through too. If you ever been rowing, if you ever gotten the erg, I recommend it, but you might need it like 911 on because that's crazy. I don't know how these women do it. But journaling is so good. Writing down your reflection, writing down how you feel, writing down goals. I think just putting it on paper, regardless, even if you say I'm not a paper person, just do it. Just do it, try it. And then everyone is different in their journaling. You can do video journaling, you can do voice memo journaling. But the thing is just being able to reflect and then look past um on how you were, and you get to see your progress too, like in pictures. When people take gym pictures and see their progress, you're like, wow, look at this. That's a form of journaling as well. So journaling is I just got into mindfulness, which is being in the moment and being like in tune with your body. I think that's super cool. You can do mindful walking, mindful eating, mindful meditations, just being understanding your body, knowing when it's in panic mode, and just living in the moment. Especially as athletes, we always think about the future and like, oh my gosh, I need to do this and this and this. But when you take everything day by day, you're able to slow it down and prevent the anxiety and all that stuff. Lastly, believe in yourself. I think I've noticed, especially this past year, how strong belief is. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, it's wild because I'll test girls during lessons, like especially with pitching. And like if they're trying to hit a spot and it's just not working and they get so bogged down by it. Like simple question, do you believe in yourself right now? And it's so interesting because they'll be like, yeah. And I like to tease them with it because it's like, hey, that wasn't very convincing. Tell me one that's a little bit more convincing than that. And within, 2 or 3 pitches, they're hitting that spot. And it's like, hey, kid, all you have to do is tell your brain that you believe in yourself and that what you're working towards is what your desired outcome is. And all of a sudden it just clicks.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, I'm trying to do more of the mental part of what is behind belief and why it's so powerful. But this reminds me of like, so, outfield, anyone can play outfield and stuff. So my coach, he does this thing where he just throws anybody out there. He's like, all right, fix them. And I'm like, really? You want me to fix that? Like, it's when I had the pitchers going out there, and like they've never played a lick of outfield. So I'm like, okay. And I have them for two weeks. And all I push is believe that you're gonna catch it. And there's these catches that they make, and I'm like, I look at the person who's next to me, I'm like, I didn't think she was gonna catch that. And they're like, did you see that, Coach P? I'm like, yeah. She goes, I believe the whole way I was gonna. And it's no athletic talent, no nothing, just the power of belief. So I'm like, how can I use more to my advantage, and how can I progress that? And regardless of sports, I try to teach women, because shout out Coach K did this for us, and it's trying to teach them that not to believe in themselves only in sports, but to believe in yourself as a woman, and anything you do in the future can go a long way. Because I know women, they lack a little bit of confidence and belief in themselves, but when the woman has belief, she's the most powerful thing in the world.
Absolutely. There was this podcast that I was listening to, and it was one that Frances told me to listen to, so I'm sure she'll remember the name. But it was really interesting because they were talking about the brain and kind of how the brain works when you're journaling. And one of the really important things that she pointed out, which is like encompasses everything that you're saying, is that so you're rewiring your brain and you're helping your brain, grow and adapt, and that's really, at the end of the day, what we're trying to focus on with all of this is our brain health. And how, like, if you write down something, that requires your brain to write it down, then you have to read it, which requires another part of the brain. And then if you say it out loud, then you're vocalizing it, and then, you're hearing it. So there's four parts that you're having to use, which is amazing because you want your brain to grow and adapt. But then not only that, something that I've started doing with my journaling is writing down skills that I have that I'm really proud of myself for having. Because a lot of the time when we think of like gratitude, we think of like external factors. Like, I'm really grateful that I have a beautiful home, that I have a family, all of these different things. But when we start focusing on ourselves and the gratitude that we have for ourselves, it really starts to change your perspective in life, because you're like, God, I am amazing. And I had no idea this whole time.
Definitely.
So I really love journaling, and I love like including parts of yourself that you're really grateful for, because then too you're going to have this journal, and if you do it every day, and you don't have to write down a whole lot. It's even if you did 3 or 5, that's amazing. And I like the number 3, so I'm going to go with 3. But then if you're having like a hard day, you have like this beautiful plethora of information that you've written about yourself, and you know that you can overcome those challenges because you knew in that moment that you were capable of it. And you're like, God, if I thought then that I could, then I certainly can now. And it's just amazing to have that to come back to.
Definitely. And I think maybe like a lot of people think it's silly. I mean, I'm one to say that. Like I was like, to write down things I'm good at, right? Like that's so silly. But then once you do it, it's like it's not silly. It's actually amazing.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
feel
it
like it's
feels
so
really good.
motivating for learning new skills, not even just softball related skills, but like if you're trying to learn a new language or trying to learn like a new hobby, perhaps, like that's really motivating to sit down and be like, oh, you know what? I did get a little bit better at that. And like being able to reflect on it. Because then you see all these days that add up where you're like, wow, I guess I am getting better.
That was me with baking. Like I was trying to do the best cinnamon rolls and they would not proof. And then eventually then one day they proved and I was like, oh my God, I'm so proud of myself.
Is there anybody that you admire for their mindset?
I think a lot of us say our mother because, they're just the strongest beings that we ever will think and see. But regardless of that, I think this might be an unpopular opinion, but I admire Prime Conor McGregor. Something about his mindset when he was, in the slumps, getting welfare checks from the Irish government, he was just nothing could stop him. That type of resilience is it wasn't taught, obviously. It was born and bred, and it was just such a great thing that I always look back on because now he has a lot of money and he's great. He's not the same athlete he was, I believe, but
I
I know
agree.
that's another podcast too. But
The fight against
but
Dustin
just
Poirier really put him behind.
yeah, and it kind of goes into um everyone says he talks a big game and all that stuff, but outside of that, he's genuinely, not that I know him, but he's genuinely a great person and a great guy, a great family man. And it's kind of what I've been trying to say to like some of my athletes because they're super nice. And it's something you need to have a little chip when you play the game of softball, you know what I mean? Have a little attitude. And it's like having this or building a character almost when you play. This
Yes.
character, like when you're not playing, it's like, who was that on the field? And it was like, it's a person, you know? So he had that. And I think I admire that a lot about him, like just having this mindset of no matter what, no matter where, I'm going to get it done. And then also being able to turn it off and be grateful for everything that's been given their way and the hard work they put themselves through.
Yes. Can you believe that girls used to tell me that I was unapproachable? I like to think that I'm fun and bubbly, and they were like, "No, you're really scared to talk. It's scary to talk to when you're on the field. We'll just field the
Oh
ball.
no.
Have a
Yeah, but you know
problem."
that I want to talk to you. Um, yeah. I can agree with them though. When off the top mom, you're like, hey, I'm like, oh hey.
I'm
Um,
not scared of you.
yeah, it's probably because I was the same type of crazy as you were on the field.
Yeah, it's all good.
Um, so our final question for you today, Bridget, what advice would you give your 16-year-old self knowing what you do now?
Ugh, when I was like going through 1,000 things. And then I was like, what am I doing? There's literally one thing I would tell myself at that age, and it's simply believe in yourself. Believe in what you do, believe in the work. Because I look back on even undergrad in St. Leo, it's like I did everything. And every time we got into exit meetings, the whole topic was, why don't you believe in yourself? And it was super annoying that that was the same topic. I'm like, I don't want to talk about that. What about my stats? Like, how do I get better? How do I go? And it's like, oh, believe in so that was literally, I was my own enemy in my own head. And at times, just because, again, like podcast, what we just said, like comparing yourself to others, having high expectations, creating this internal pressure, it's like all of that would have been washed away, at least minimized, if I that failure is part of life, failure is a part of sports. It's more on believing myself and finding out of it instead of just dwelling in it.
Yeah, it's so crazy too
What about
because
you guys? I'm interested for you guys.
well, it makes me giggle like that I guess it's just like getting the glimpse into somebody else's mind, but like you were the hype girl for everyone else. Like you were the person that was like, BC, you need to believe in yourself. Like, Kayleese, you need to believe in yourself. Like you were the person that was helping them instill that. And like I think it's so humbling that it's very much that thing where it's like, what do you feel like was the thing that was holding you back, like that fear of X? And appreciate you being so candid about that.
Yeah, and it's funny looking back on that, and not a lot of people ask me questions about that because I think that they just believe like, oh, of course she believes in herself. She's telling everybody else to believe in her. So she's like, so, oh my god, or like what and all this stuff. And I going back and hearing stories about me is funny. It's like that was me. I'm so extra. What was that? But it's really funny looking back. The power of belief is crazy. Like I would think of a time. I think Kaylee's is a perfect example. Shout out to Kaylee's. I would tell her things and she would go out the next day and she would go crazy. She would bawl like a baller. And it's like sometimes we just need to be reminded. Some of us need to be reminded as well. And especially in the game of softball and being women, we are in our own thoughts and creating these ruminations where we just be put aside and be like, hey, let's just be you, be great, and just bounce back. And I put up a front a lot that I was not able to have that person come to me, and because I just, oh, she's fine, she's doing great, but in reality I wasn't.
Yeah.
It is
Uh,
what it is.
Sam, what advice would you give your 16-year-old self?
Well, where I am in life right now, I don't believe in like coincidences. I think that everything happens in like divine timing and as it should. And I think that 16-year-old Sam was just really worried about things that weren't in her control. And that, I wanted to play on Team Canada. That was not in my control at all. Um, I wanted to get a softball scholarship. And like where I ended up going and how everything played out has led me to where I am today. And I'm really grateful for all of those things. And I would have, I would have told myself to just have fun and enjoy the game and that it's just a game and that it teaches you really valuable skills that like you'll come back to later in life, but stressing about things that aren't in your control aren't going to make you enjoy the game anymore.
Yeah. Um, I think I would tell myself that it always like the emotions around the event that is happening always feel more intense because you're in the thick of it. Like I just think of COVID and like, we were so heartbroken that our season was cut short. Like, I have no doubt that team that year, like, we were on track to do such amazing things. And it's funny
Yeah.
because I texted Chase, who's now my husband at the time we were dating, and was like, "Hey, our season is cut short." Like, I was bawling my eyes out, like, it was so heartbreaking, and he was like, I don't want this to sound rude, but, like, it seems worse because you're in the middle of it." And he's like, "When you take a step back and, like, when you're not in the thick of it anymore, like, you realize that, um, it may have altered something, but it wasn't life ending, really." And he's like, "The sports always feel more intense when you're playing them, and then you're done with it, and you're like, oh, that it's just a game. It's just a game, and, like, I'm supposed to go out there and have fun. Like, this isn't going to be the thing that changes the trajectory. Like, this one moment doesn't hold that much weight." And I think that goes back to, like, that internal pressure and being able to separate a little bit and just say, like, it's just a game. It's supposed to be fun.
Yeah, you guys both hit a lot of like what I'm going through this year with my team. Like back to what Sam was talking about. Everything that's happened in my own life, I believe, has put me here with this Barry team, which I never thought in 1,000 years whatever I would be part of a Barry team. But they're just because the rivalry and all that stuff. And it's funny because I have a senior, and she is like she's got out of a what's it called a minor sprain in her shoulder or something from diving. And when you're senior year, you're trying to everything's going 100. And I said, hey, relax. You're gonna get out of this. Slow down and just have fun. It's senior year. Have fun. And also has been struggling a lot with her hitting, and she's like wanting more outfield. And I'm like, hey, how about you just go hit a little more? Just being able to slow down the game for her, which I think is very essential for assistant coaches to do, because head coaches are always doing something more, and assistant coaches would be like, hey, I think that doesn't look right, let me go talk to her. And now she had a great fall season, going into the senior season, this going in strong. So I'm just thinking, what if I was not put in this position? Like, would she still be having a good season, or she were being put where you need to be? Like Sam was saying, I believe in that a lot. Everything happens for a reason as well.
Yes. Well, thank you for hanging out with us for the last 45 minutes-ish.
Yes, thank
Yeah,
you.
of
I'm
course.
so
So
excited. We're
cool.
gonna have to have you back. This is just the greatest.
I do have to say, makes me feel like we're geniuses because everything that you've talked about today, like we have been like we've put into our book, we've put into our programs. It's like, oh, we're on the right track. Validation is there.
Francis's journal tonight. I am so smart.
Well, we will absolutely have you back on the show. We'll have, I'm sure, hopefully, some questions come about in the comments with what people, I guess, want to learn a little bit more about, or something that maybe they're hung up on, and we can kind of discuss that in an open format with it. But I, yeah, I feel so good about that we're on the right track, and that what we're telling these young women to help them not just through softball but through life is truly something that it's something that is sustainable, first of all, that they can actually manage to do daily. But things that are going to help them not just through scholarships in college, but through careers and everything in between.
Yeah, this is a side note. When you said through life and through experiences, I think as a coach, you should always. I mean, I'm like 50, but I mean like half my mid 20s. But as a coach, we should not only coach the game, to just play day by day, play game by game, inning by inning. We should coach for a lifetime. Because I look back and I'm coaching my girls. I'm like, oh, that's what Coach K taught me, or like that's what Coach K this and that, and it's even more. And eventually, I'll give it to my daughters and to my granddaughters and all. Just going beyond. It's just sports life. It's beyond life and all that stuff. So I think not just worrying about in game, worrying more about how can I use this in my life after I'm done with the game of softball, because it's so short.
Yeah, I have to say that's what frustrates me a lot about youth sports is I hear stories about how these coaches are talking to young girls, not even young women yet, but young girls, and how they choose to approach them. And it's just heartbreaking because they don't realize that what they're saying will be held on to for a lifetime, or how
Mhm.
they're choosing to approach that kid will reframe her mindset in that one conversation, because she's so malleable. She doesn't have the ability yet to be like, well, kind of not screw his opinion, but like his opinion of me only matters so much. My opinion of myself means more. Like when they're so little, they're not having that internal validation yet.
Validation.
Mm-hmm. And it all
Hit a
circles back.
Yep, circles.
I don't have anything else. Do you, Sam?
No, beautiful. Thank you so much. Made my day.
You. All right. Guys, have a happy new year.
You too.
All
Thank
blessed.
you so much.
Okay, love you, Bridge.
Love you too. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.